Hello and welcome to DevSpot. Today I'm going to be showing you how to connect a backend to part one of this project, which you've probably already seen, in which we put together a developer portfolio. So now we're going to go ahead and use some AWS services such as Lambda, API Gateway, and we're going to connect to a DynamoDB to load project descriptions and project images dynamically. So let's go ahead and jump into this. I'm going to go kind of off the cuff here, and whatever problems I run into, I will just share those with you because I'm sure as you're kind of learning how to do this, you'll also run into some problems. So let's work together through this. So first step, I'm going to set up a DynamoDB. So let's go ahead and get into here. Okay, so then we're going to create a table. Let's give this a table name of projects table. And then for our partition key, let's go ahead and give it a project ID. We'll keep that as a string. And then we're just going to go ahead and use all of the default settings, and we're going to do that for most of the services we're going to use here. So let's go ahead and create this table. Okay, so we see that we have a projects table here, and you can tell that I already have a couple other tables set up. But yes, okay, so while that's creating, let's go ahead and set up our Lambda function first, and then we can connect that with our API gateway. So let's go in here and go to Lambda. I'm going to open this in a new tab. Okay, and you can see here I have a few of these set up as well. So we're going to go up here and click Create Function. And let's give our function a name. So let's call this Portfolio Projects. We're going to do this with Node.js. So we're going to want to create a new role from AWS policy templates. So then let's give this a role name of, let's say, projects no, let's go with portfolio projects role. I don't really want to mess with any of those. Okay, so we're going to create this role here, and later on we're going to have to add, we're going to set it up with full access to DynamoDB. So you actually have this role here that allows you to access all the elements of this Lambda function, and you're able to actually call that API to get the data. So we'll set that up with full access, and I'll show you how to do that here in a second. So let's create our function.
Okay, so there you go. So now you can see that we have a Lambda function set up, obviously the most basic Lambda function that is kind of preloaded with this. So let's go ahead and go to the next step, which is setting up a gateway. Let's open that in a new tab. Alright, so you can see I have a couple of APIs already set up, but let's go ahead and create a new one. And here we're going to choose our REST API. That's the API we're going to build. So let's build that. And make sure you click the one that is not private, okay? So we have REST API, a new API. Let's call this Portfolio Projects. And regional is fine. Let's see, so let's go ahead with that. Create the API. Okay. So now the next step when you have your API created is you're going to want to create a resource. So let's say we're going to have a few different methods in our API here. So we're going to want to create projects. So that's going to be a post request sent to our DynamoDB. And we're going to have a get request that's going to pull in all of our project information so that we can render it. So let's first set up, let's do get projects. And we're going to want to enable this. Let's create that. Okay, so now you can see that our API will have a endpoint that will have this get projects resource at the end of it. So then you're going to want to click this, go to actions, and you're going to want to create a method within that endpoint there. And this is going to be our get request to get all of our projects. Okay, and we're going to go in here, and you're going to want to make sure that your Lambda region matches the region that you set up your Lambda function in. So I'm in ES 2, so when I go in here, I should call this portfolio project. So as I type this, so there you go, you can see that our Lambda function is showing up, and this is going to be how you're actually connecting this API gateway to the Lambda function. Okay. We're going to want to use this proxy integration. This just makes it easier for handling different request details and stuff like that. So we're going to go ahead and use that. So then let's go ahead and create this method and permission. Yes, so this is going to be connecting to our Lambda function, giving permission for this connection. Click OK. And there we go. So we have a running API that has a endpoint of get projects with get request to connect to our Lambda function. Perfect. So now let's set up another, create another resource of, let's do post projects. So this will be our post request that's going to create a project in our database. So we have post projects, and then we're going to want to add a method, and this is going to be a post method. Okay. And yes, and we have portfolio projects, and save. Okay, there we go. So So now our API has two methods in it. We have get projects, post projects. Let's go ahead and deploy our API. So if you're going to be editing your API here, you need to make sure that you deploy it each time because then your changes will not be saved and you'll be wondering, hey, what's going on? It's probably because you haven't deployed your API. So deployment stage, stage name. Let's go with, this will be our production stage. We don't need a description or anything. So there you go. We have our API running in our production stage. We have get projects, post projects, and here is our invoke URL. So if you're going to make a request to this API, you'll have this URL /get projects or /post projects. Okay. So the next step is going to be creating a handler here that's going to handle our requests to the Lambda function. So we'll have, I'll link the documentation in the description, but you can use a simple try catch where you say, hey, is this a get request? Call this method. Hey, is this a post request? Call this method. So in the next step, I'm going to open up VS Code and show you how to set up a Lambda function within there. It's easy to use VS Code. So let's get into it. So actually, I got a little ahead of myself there, so we're going to want to actually add some permissions to the IAM role that we set up. So if you remember, we set up this portfolio project role. So within your Lambda function, so you're in your Lambda function area, the code is over here, right? So you're going to go to configuration. You're going to see that this role that we set, so portfolio project role, go ahead and click that. It's going to take you to this role. It's going to say, hey, these are all the permissions you have. So just basic execution role. We're going to want to add our DynamoDB access. So let's go ahead and
to add permissions, attach policies, and here you can search for DynamoDB full access. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and use DynamoDB full access. That'll just give this account full access to all the different things it'll need for DynamoDB. Policy was successfully attached to the role. Okay, and then there's another feature called CloudWatch where you can actually see your all of your different calls to your API. It makes it easier for error handling when you're trying to see like what's going on if things aren't working. So CloudWatch full access. Let's go ahead and add this and attach policies. Okay, so we have our permission policies set up with our account. So now we can actually go ahead and hopefully start putting together some code here for our Lambda function to start making some actual requests. So let's go ahead and start setting that up. Okay, so now the next step is going to be setting up our Lambda function here. So inside just a blank file, create an index.js. I'm going to walk you through how to set up this Lambda function. Okay? So I already have it functioning here, but I'm going to walk through step by step. So first we're going to start with setting up our const here, which is going to be the AWS, and we are going to require the AWS SDK. Okay, so this is AWS SDK. And then the next step is going to be, so you're going to want to configure your region. So whatever region you're in, I'm in US East 2, so you can go here, you can click, you can be like, okay, so US East 2, makes sense. Paste that in there. And then you're going to use, we're going to be using DynamoDB. So we're going to do AWS DynamoDB document client, okay? And then the next step here is going to be setting up our table name, which we set up previously. So if you go back here, you can see projects table, that's our table name. And then we want to set up our paths, and I'll show you exactly what that means too. So we have our get projects path. So you're like, okay, what is the path? So if you go to our configuration here, you can see that we've set up our API gateway previously. So we have this path of /post projects and a path of /get projects. So here we're just going to set these as const values so that we're able to set up our switch case statement to check which endpoint is being called. So then similarly to what the Lambda function already had preset, we're going to set up an exports handler here. Exports handler equals an asynchronous function, and there's going to be an event. Okay, so then we're going to have a response. So let's set that value, and then we have a switch case statement here. So switch true. All right, so now our first case is going to be checking if our method is the get method, okay? And it's also going to match that with our path of get projects. So to do that, you do case and then your event, and then to see what method you're calling here, you're going to call this event.http method. So this is going to check whether it's a post, get, put, delete, stuff like that. But we only have get and post currently. So let's go ahead and set this, and then we're going to check that event path, which the path was set above, which is get projects path. And then we are going to set up the get projects method, which we have not set up yet, and I'll show you how to do that. Break case, and then this is going to be similar again, HTTP method, and now we're going to check if this is equal to a post method, and this will be how we're actually going to create our dynamic projects, or you could actually set this up as a blog as well. So then let's check the path. The path should be the post projects path, and if it is, we'll set the response to call the post projects method, which we haven't set up yet. And now the post projects method, so this is going to be posting to our DynamoDB. Okay, so we're going to be taking in the body of the event. So we're going to want to parse this body so that it's able to understand it and put it in our DynamoDB. So then let's break here, and then finally let's just set a default if we have an issue here, response, and I'm going to set up a method called response return that's going to return us a status code, and we'll say like you messed up. Okay, response equals, okay, so we have our switch case set up, and now we're going to want to return the response and then get out of here and start making defining some of these methods that we have set up. Okay, so the first method we're going to set up is our get projects method. So it's going to be an asynchronous function, and we're going to call it get projects. And you're going to want to set up the parameters. So for our get projects method, all we need is that table name to pass to get all of the items that are within our DynamoDB. Okay, so let's set up const params, and then we're going to have table name, and that is going to be our DynamoDB table name. Let's go down here, and then we have a try catch block. So in our try here, we're going to set our data that's going to be returned as await DynamoDB. Come on, learn how to type DynamoDB. And now the method we're going to use here is scan. So the scan is going to just scan over all of the items in our table there. So scan, pass in the params, and promise. And now we're going to return the response return method that we have not set up yet. And I'll just set that up next so you kind of understand what's going on there. So then obviously if this runs, we had a successful call to the DynamoDB and we're returning data, so we'll give it a status of 200, and the catch we'll have an error, and we will return the response return. We'll say, we'll give it 500 and error. And if I want to set that equal to that, no, why would you? What are you talking about? Return response. Okay, perfect. So there we go. We have our get projects set up, and now I'm going to show you how to set up this response return, kind of walk you through that. So let's define our function here. The function is going to be called response return. Now this is going to take a status code and a body. It's going to return with a status code, which is the status code, and the headers, we're going to be dealing with JSON here. So let's do, I'm not going to type that. So we have our content type, application JSON. So if you're kind of new to this, when you're dealing with JSON, you're going to want to set the content type of the response data so that it's returning what your application is expecting. And then the body is going to be stringified and body. Okay, so this is our response return method that we're going to call in each of these so that we're able to actually, when we use Postman, it'll return nicely structured data for us. And then finally, let's set up our post projects method. So let's actually, I'll just So here, let's set this up. So we have an asynchronous function, and it's called post projects. And now, obviously, you're going to want to take in that request body, because that's what we're going to be posting to our DynamoDB database. And similarly to above, we're going to set up some parameters. And just like above, we have our table name, and that is the DynamoDB table name. And then we have our item that we're going to pass through, which is the request body. And that's going to be your project that you're trying to post to the database. Okay, so then let's call our DynamoDB document client here, and this is going to be put. So we're going to be DynamoDB dot put, and you're going to pass the parameters. Okay, so we're going to be posting these parameters to our DynamoDB. And this is promise, and then arrow function there. Okay, so now we're going to call our response return here so that we're able to see, hey, did this send successfully? So let's set up an object here. We'll call this body, and let's have it with, give it a message to respond with success. And we also want to return the request body to make sure that the item that we're posting is the one that we meant to post. Let's return the response return, and this will be status 200 because it was successful, and it will send the body. Okay. Finally, let's add, just to add some sort of error handling here, let's go with error there, and we'll just return the error. Okay, perfect. So we have all of our methods set up. So then what you're going to want to do is you can just copy and paste all of this, and you can post it in here. Okay, so now you have your Lambda function set. But in order for these changes to take place, you need to deploy your Lambda function. It's updating it, successfully updated the function. Okay, so now let's go to our Postman, and you're going to see here we have get projects, we have post projects. So let's go ahead and see. I've already been kind of tinkering with it because I ran into some problems earlier. Let's add a third item to our database. So we have our project ID. So when you're sending it in, we set our partition key as project ID. So make sure that you're following that structure, and you're incrementing your project IDs like so. Let's see if this let's go ahead and see if this works. So we're going to send that. You can see that we had the message return of success, and the item that we sent was our project ID, which was 3. Okay. So our post method works. Awesome. Let's go to our get method. So here, the difference between these two, this is a get request, this is a post request, this has a body, and it's expecting JSON. Okay. So make sure that all of these settings are correct. Otherwise, you'll run into problems. So now we have our endpoint here of get projects. We don't have a body for this. You don't have to worry about any headers. Let's go ahead and see if we can scan our DynamoDB and pull all of the data that we sent in. And as you can see, we can. So we have our project ID of 3, 1, 2, 3. So I've sent 3 in testing because ran into some problems earlier, but we got it working now. So there you go. You can see that you're able to post items and then also get items. And if you're wondering where did this come from, what is this URL here? This is our endpoint that we set up in our gateway here. So if you go back to your API gateway, you'll see here this is your invoke URL. So this is going to be the main URL, and then you obviously have your resources here at the end. So if you want to call your get projects method, you call this invoke URL / get projects or / post projects, just like that. Okay, you can come back here. Let's look at our table here. You can see we have 2 there. Let's run this, and we have 3 items in our database. So there you go. You have a functioning API, and you're able to post and get data from it. So now the next step is going to be actually implementing a way of using this in our first part of this project. So we're going to set up a little page where we have inputs, and we're going to post to the database, and then we're also going to call using Axios, we're going to call the GET request to pull in all of the project data and then render that on our site. Okay, so now that we have our Lambda function set up, our API gateway set up, and our DynamoDB set up, let's go ahead and start connecting this to our projects cards in our portfolio. So here we have the data being returned, and in the last video I showed you that we just imported it from a JSON file. But now we're actually going to get this JSON data from our DynamoDB. So let's go ahead and start creating some methods here. So let's get our methods object set. And let's call this function get projects. Okay, and then we're going to use Axios to call our Lambda function here. So I'm going to show you how to import that and set up a simple Axios request. So to set up Axios in our project here, you're going to type in npm install Axios. And this is going to install all the necessary packages and libraries that we're going to need to use Axios. So then within our script tag of our projects card, we're going to import Axios from Axios. Okay. And within our method here, we're going to set up the Axios request. And to do that, you simply type Axios, not whatever that is, Axios get. So this is going to be a get request. And then within our get request, you're going to call our endpoint here. So let's go back to here. We have our get request. This is get projects. Come back here. There. Okay. And then to get the geez, what did I just click? Oops. Let's pull this over a little bit. Okay. So then you go .then. And then your response, and we have an arrow function. And we're going to map this response to, I'm going to set this up slightly different. So let's go with, I'll just call this Lambda return data. And we'll just set it to an empty object there. So then we can set our response equal to this. So this Lambda return data is going to equal our response. Okay. And we'll actually set that to the response data. And I will I'll console log the response so you can kind of see what's being returned here. Okay. So from that, we're going to add a catch here just in case we have some sort of error. And we will set this to an arrow function, and we will console log the error to see what that could possibly be. So let's save this. Let's run npm run serve. We don't have this running locally. Let me open this. Go over here, localhost. Oh, I gotta be in my actual correct. Okay. All right, so now we have our project up and running here. These are coming from the project JSON that we set up, and now we have a get projects method set. So this should call our Lambda function, and it should return all of our project data. So I'm going to set up a simple, let's go with, I'll just add a div here, just really quick, button, click. And then when we click it, we're going to call get projects. And let's go ahead and see what this returns. So let's save that. Come down here, click. Let me open this in slide view here. Okay, so we have our button down here that we're going to click. Let's go ahead and see if this returns any data. Nope. So we have a CORS issue. Okay, so to fix this issue, so when you're actually going to call this Lambda function, you're probably going to run into a CORS issue So what we're going to want to do is go back to our Lambda function here, and within our response return method, you're going to want to pass in these certain access control settings. So I went ahead and set the allow origin to all. So this will allow us to call this from any origin. You could also set this to your local host. You could set this to the site that you have running. So if you have like your portfolio, say you have like, so for example, mine could be devspot.com. So that could set this to only work with that site. But I currently just have this set to work with any site. So now let's go back to our site here, and you can see, I'll clear this, click this one more time, and you can see now that we're getting data returned. So we have inside our data, we have 3 items, and these are all the projects that we posted. So there you go. Within our actual project, we have a functioning GET request, and we're able to pull in all of that data. And we can actually see here, so if I go, I'll show you here how to just put it on the actual page. Simply just map it in there, and then it'll pull it in, and you can see right here we have all of our project information similarly to how we have this set up, and then you just map these to our project cards. Pretty slick. So now what you're going to do is go ahead and add our Vue router here, and this is going to install all the necessary packages and allow us to use router to create a separate page for posting our projects to our DynamoDB. So I'll come back to you when this is done installing. Okay, so now that we have router set up, you can see that it added this router folder here, and within our index.js, it's gone ahead and added a few routes here for us. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and set up. We're going to add a route to this, and we're going to call it post. So let's go ahead and set up the route. We're going to add a path of post, and we're going to name post, and the component we're going to create here in a second, and we are going to call this post project. I don't want this to say post message. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a component here, new file, post project.vue, and we'll add a sample div here just to see if it's working. So we have that component set. Come back here, we're going to import oh, not views, we want components slash post project view. Save that. Oops. npm run serve, get that running again. Okay, so now we should have a path set up in our project that maps to /post, and it should render our post project component here. So once this is up and running, I will see how that's looking. So you can see here when we added our Vue router, it automatically adds all of this stuff to it, which we don't want. So let's go ahead and get rid of these routes. We only need our post route at the moment. We don't need this home component, and this we do not need. Get rid of it. Let's go to our app.vue. So it added these router links. So let's go ahead and add /post. Alright, so now we've got some problems here, so we just got to kind of work through these. So no such file about .vue, which is fine. We need to figure out where this is being called. Okay, so there we go. So we can see that we have our post component here, and our test is showing up properly. Okay. So what we can do here is go ahead and add some input boxes. So let's say let's see. So we have, let's go to our projects card and see all of the data, or actually let's try to map it to our JSON here. So our project JSON, it expects 2 links. This is just terrible though, too much. So we should go ahead and try to map our input to the JSON structure here. So we have our input here that is going to be our ID. We have another input that's going to be our title. We have another input that'll be the about part. We have another input that's going to be our base64 encoded image. And then we have 2 more inputs that are going to be our links that we need. Okay, so we have those. And then within here, we're going to want to set up our data object here, our data method, return this, and let's set post data, and this is going to equal an object here, which is going to be our project ID, and we need to set the title, and we need to set the about, and the image, and link 1, and link 2. Okay, so let's actually go ahead and change the structure of how we set up our inputs. So I'm going to actually add a container class here. All right, so we got a div container, and then I'm going to put each label and input inside its own input container. This will make it easier later on to style it how we want. So let's go ahead, I'll show you how to do this first one, and then I'll copy and paste the rest. So let's add a label, and then this is going to be for our project ID, so I'll just call it for ID. We'll call this project ID, and then come down here, we'll add an input text, and to map our label to it, we're going to give it a name of ID as well. Okay, so then the cool part of Vue is being able to bind our inputs here to certain attributes in our data here. So say we want this input to correspond to this project ID. You can simply use a V model, okay? So then to bind it to our post data object here, we're going to call post data. And then to access our project ID, we're going to go dot, so we're using dot notation here, project ID. Okay, so then when we actually create the button to submit these inputs, it will map to this post data object, and then we're going to be able to send this object to our DynamoDB database that we set up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the rest of the inputs here. Okay, so there we go. So those are all basically the same thing. But you can see that they're mapping to their corresponding, I don't know why that is spaced funny, but you can see that it's mapping to its corresponding value here. So we want our title to map to post data title, about, post data about, etc., etc. Okay? So let's make sure I don't have too many divs here. So this one goes there. Where does this guy go? Yeah, I feel like we don't need that one. I might have copied that wrong. Okay, so we'll see if that works. Okay, so now we have all of our inputs set. Okay, we're going to now go ahead and create our actual Axios request here, our post request, to our Lambda function that we set up. Okay, so to do that, we're going to create a method called post project, and within this method, we're going to call Axios, which if you don't have Axios, you just need to install it using npm. So just npm install Axios, and then you're going to import Axios, and then that'll give you access to it. So you simply do Axios, and this is going to be a post request, so axios.post, And then within our quotations here, we're going to add our URL to our post Lambda function, which is our post projects. And then to send a body, because this is a post request, it's going to be expecting a body. And the body that we're sending is our post data. And that's going to be our like project layout. So then when we actually call our GET request, we're going to pull in all of that data that we sent. Okay, so then this is a promise. So then then the response, we're going to set an arrow function here. And why is there, I'm going to click that bracket. Okay, so then from there, I'll just console log the response for now, but you could map this response to certain data items or anything that you want, but this will allow us to see what we're getting in return here. So console log response, and then we're going to go ahead and add a catch here to see if there's any errors, and if there are, we'll just output it to the console as well to see. Okay, so now this should be good to go. We're going to go ahead and create a button here in our container class. Let's see, so we're going to call this a button, button, and we're going to give it a post there, and then we'll give it a type of submit. Okay, so then another cool part of Vue, it's similar to just regular old HTML, but you have a click event here. So at click, we're going to call our post project method, and then this will take all of our input that we have inside these boxes, okay, and it will send them to our post data, and then from our post data, it's going to call this post project, so it's going to call this URL, and in the body of the request, it's going to send our post data. Okay, so let's go ahead, save this. Okay, so yeah, I think I must have copied incorrectly. Let's see. So that one goes that one, that one goes that one, that goes that one, that goes that one. And oh, okay. So okay, so here we go. So we can see that we have all of our project IDs, all the inputs, and then down here, if you remember, we have our GET request down here. So let's go ahead and test this. So I actually went in and I cleared out our DynamoDB here. So it's entirely empty. So I'm going to create a new project ID with a project ID of 1. We'll call this first project about section. I'll just give these image base 64. Okay, mute my phone, thank you. And then this will be link 1, and this will be link 2. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to open this full screen. Let's inspect here, and let's see what we get in our console. And if we have errors, we can go through our network tab here and check it out. Okay, so let's post this and see what happens. Okay, so we got our response back. It looks like we have a status of 200. Let's see what the data returned was. Project ID 1. Yep, so that's sent in. Message success. All right. So that should mean that it is in our DynamoDB now. So let's go down to our GET request down here, and let's see what this let's see if this returns our item. And wouldn't you know it, it does. Look at that. So we have a project ID, the about section, link 1, link 2. Perfect. So we have a fully functioning GET request, a fully functioning POST request to a DynamoDB a database. So we're going to be able to store all of our project information. And yeah, so you have separate tabs and everything for it. So now you're going to be able to actually update and pull in information about your projects. Pretty neat. So now I'm going to, in this next section, I'll just show you how to kind of tie these up a little bit. And yeah, you'll have a fully functioning portfolio. So let's get into it. Okay, so now you're probably thinking, well, that's great that we have both those methods working, but how do I actually get it to create these cards here for us? So I'm going to walk you through how to set that up now. It's basically, we just need to reconfigure some things inside our projects card.view here. So within our get projects method that we created, we are mapping our response data to this Lambda return data. Okay, so if I so first step here, let's go ahead and let's create a couple cards here. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to use that base64 encoding site that I was using before, but there are ways that you can create a basic JavaScript function to do that, but I'll do that at a later time. So here's our title here. Let's call this string methods video. Okay, so this will be what it's about. So this project was used to teach people how to use string methods. Okay, and then the image. So what we're going to do is go back to here, go to our base64 encoder. Okay, so we got a little thumbnail there, which is going to be our base64. So you're going to go ahead and copy this, and then basically put it inside the image input there. Okay, and then we have links, which I don't think I have any links to that. Let's see. Okay, so I went and found a link. So the link one goes to GitHub. So this, I'll just put a link in here to the video. Okay, so then let's post this. Let's check to see what the status is on that. And we got status at 200, so great. So we should have a project with an image in there. So I'm going to create another one just so I can show that the for loop is working here for iterating over the data. String methods, here I'll do this. I'll call this second string methods just so we can tell that there's a difference. Okay, and then let's post this again. Status at 200. Great. So we should have 2 items in there, and they should return our base64 encoded images, about sections, yada yada yada. Great. So now let's map this to our projects cards. So from here we have our Lambda data return. Okay, so that's where we're saving it, into this Lambda data return object. And similarly to how we did it up here, we're going to, honestly, I'll just copy, we'll have 2 separate ones here. So let's go with this. Okay, so to change these cards to work with our Lambda return data, all we need to do is go in here. This project data should actually be our Lambda return data. And then, so as you can see, I'll show you here. So if you click this, let it pull in the data, you can see that it stores our projects within an items array. Okay, so to actually get the items out of here, you need to go .items, and then we're going to actually iterate over this Lambda return data.items. Okay, so instead of projects data array, this is going to be items, and then we need to go in here and change the naming, because this obviously matters when you're trying to pull in the data. It needs to know which element it's supposed to access, and these are not the same. Oops. I don't have any idea what just happened there. Okay, so we have title, we have image, we have about, and then our links. This is going to be link 1, and this is going to be link 2. Alright, so let's go ahead and save that and see what we get. And there we go, look at that. So we're pulling in information from the database. It's able to render our images. You can see here that it'll redirect to YouTube if you click that. So yeah, you just created your projects and posted them dynamically. And now another cool thing to do, let's clean this up a little bit. We don't need this anymore. So obviously, you don't want people to have to come to your site and click this to actually see the information. So in Vue, you have the ability to create a mounted lifecycle hook. Okay. So all that does is when I'll just do this get projects. So we're going to call this method when the DOM is rendering our component here. Okay, so when somebody visits our site, this element is rendered, and when it's rendered, it's going to call this so that automatically everything is populated when your site is visited. And that's one of the more common lifecycle hooks in Vue, is this mounted hook here. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and refresh the page and see if our projects show up. Okay, so we have our home page here. We have all of our links. We have little about sections. They scroll down. This is our projects that are rendered from a JSON file stored locally. And then down here, look at that. We have our projects being pulled in from our DynamoDB using our Lambda function and the API Gateway that we set up. We have links. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And then you have your separate page where you can go, you can create posts here. And obviously you can take your time and make this look a little prettier, but for the sake of just creating a functioning dynamic JSON-based website, I mean, I feel like this is pretty straightforward and about as basic as it gets to get your first project up and running. And I mean, now that you've created this project, you can say that you know how to use AWS Lambda functions, you know how to use API gateways, you know how to use Vue, you know basic HTML, you know CSS. I mean, all of these tools are just great to know. So if you found this tutorial helpful, if you enjoyed putting it together, please drop a comment below. Please consider subscribing. I'd love to know if you have any other projects that you'd like me to go over or any other topics you'd like me to cover. Yeah, leave a comment below. Thanks.